All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. This is episode 101, believe it or not. And I know you guys missed me. I missed you guys. It's been, I think, since, I don't even know, March or May or something like that. It was the last time we were live. But today we have an awesome topic. I'm sure everyone here listening to us right now has probably sat there making hundreds and thousands of sheets of curtain wall elevations or tagging exterior walls or dimensioning plans, and probably thought there's a better way to use your time. I know as a Revit user myself, I've gone through that as well. And so this season, these few episodes of BIM After Dark Live, we are going to focus on construction documentation and all various aspects of it within Revit, within BIM, within our process, and looking at it from different lenses. And so today I have a guest who's going to be talking about a tool that automates the process of a lot of the really arduous tasks of construction documentation. So I'm super excited. Oh, maybe people can't hear me. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I just see that people are saying check your sound. Let me know if you can't hear me, but hopefully you guys can. And so I'm super excited to jump into it today. Oh, ignore. Thanks, Scott. So you just throw me off and then say that it was your problem. Before we jump into it, for those of you that maybe have not seen this show before, there's 100 other episodes, so feel free to go check those out. You can go to live.bimafterdark.com and check out the other 100 episodes. But this is a weekly live stream where we talk about Revit and BIM and all kinds of related technologies to architecture, construction, and engineering, whether it's me or I have a guest on like tonight. And I also will check the chat. So definitely, if you're here live, I want you guys to be chatting, asking questions, and I will try to feed them into the conversation as best I can to make sure that it doesn't derail us, but also adds value to the conversation. Before we actually do jump into introducing our guest, I did want to take a moment to mention our sponsor for this episode, as well as honestly supporting this show since really the beginning. So those of you who have been a follower of mine have heard of BIMbox before. They make laptops and desktops that are specifically designed and tuned for us. By us, I mean Revit and BIM users. And this show has 100% run on BIM boxes for the last 3 years. So ever since it started, every tutorial, every video, every live stream you've ever seen has been on a BIM box laptop or desktop. In fact, right now, the one that I have that you guys are kind of seeing right here is the Mech 16 model, which is a new model that they just came out with. A phenomenal chassis, an awesome laptop. And I will be doing in detail reviews on the channel, so definitely check out in the next coming months in-depth reviews of the laptop and the desktops for BIMbox. But for now, make sure you go over, talk to them if you're looking for a new laptop or a new desktop for Revit and Twinmotion and Enscape and all these great tools. Head on over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com. Let them know that you heard about us here. They'll treat you really well, and then you can hook yourselves up with a nice new laptop or computer. I see we have some returning folks from all these 3+ years of streaming. I recognize quite a few names in the chat. I see, Shamila's here. Hey, Shamila. And Sean Page is here. Scott Valentine. A lot of you guys have been hanging out for years, so I really appreciate you coming back and coming to hang out with us on this. Well, it's nighttime for me. It may not be depending on where you are in the world. But without further ado, though, I think it's time that we introduce our guest. And I'm going to bring into the fold here Miguel. Hey, Miguel. I wasn't brave enough. I lost it as I was going through it. I was going to do the last name, but I decided not to. So maybe I'll let you introduce yourself and say your last name. And I just wasn't comfortable enough rolling the R, and I didn't practice it enough. Go ahead, Miguel. Welcome to the show, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. I mean, you did it pretty well when we were talking before going live. You did pretty good. I'm just saying. So you can roll the R.
I might need to hear you say it again, then I could do it. But that's fine. It's okay. So maybe I'll let everyone know your full name and who you are and where you come from and what you're here to represent.
Cool. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So my name is Miguel Bardaji. I know it's a pretty weird or different last name. Which you can maybe tell by my last name, I'm not from the US. I was actually born and raised in Madrid, Spain, but moved to the US 9 years ago, where I studied architecture. So I do have a background in architecture. And after completing my degree, I practiced architecture for a couple of years, then decided that the coding side or the automation side was more fun. So then I did the switch completely to the coding side. And now I essentially dedicate my career for, automating workflows and making everyone's life working with Revit a little bit better. And so at EvolveLab, I've been for 2 years now. I am the Glyph product owner and main developer. And yeah, just super excited to be here. Not gonna lie. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. So when you decided to make a switch, what did you go directly to Evolve Lab? Was that sort of the you were working in architecture, you started getting interested in the computational, programming side of all this stuff, and then opportunity at Evolve Lab showed up, or was there an in between between that?
Yeah, so it was in between. At my previous company, we had this like project and that was in Dynamo,
Hmm.
and that was about, let's try to automate stuff.
Hmm.
So I started in Dynamo first, and then, quickly went to the C Sharp and SAML side, and I personally like it more. Dynamo, it's great, not gonna lie, but C Sharp is, it's a little bit faster. You have more control, I think. So
Hmm.
that's why. So yeah, there was definitely in between.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to talk about Evolve Lab. Glyph is the name of the tool, and so for those of you that don't know, that's what we're talking about today. I'll put links below, and we're going to talk about it a lot. And you probably have mentioned, if you're following me, you've probably heard of Evolve Lab through Varus, which is an AI tool for generating renderings and images in Revit, and I have a video on that early in the year, and I'm actually going to be doing an update on that as well because Varus has come out with some incredible new features, and that's one thing I will say about you guys over at Evolve Lab is I feel like new features roll out a lot and pretty frequently, and they're always very exciting. And so I'm assuming Glyph is no different. I followed Glyph sort of through social media and marketing, but I haven't personally used it very very much, and so I'm excited to learn about it as well. And so maybe what we'll do is just quickly tell people what is Glyph, and what does it do, and whether you want to show on the computer or just talk about it, up to you. I'll flip between it before we actually jump into some demo, just so everyone understands what it is that we're talking about and what this tool
Yep.
does.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so I can share my screen.
Hmm.
So the first thing about Glyph is a Revit add-in, and that essentially automates the documentation process. As you previously mentioned, right, you had previously experience with curtain wall dimensions, curtain wall elevations, and stuff like that. So Glyph is all about automating the mundane tasks, so you can spend more time designing, QA/QC the drawings, and developing that critical thinking in terms of how you document your project. So a Glyph essentially is all about tasks and bundles. So a task, and I will demo it very briefly, but essentially a task performs one thing. So there's a task that creates views by level. There's a task that creates dimensions, right? And then there's a task that creates tagging. So then you combine all these tasks into bundles. So instead of having to click every single task, you can just combine them into one, and you can just click one thing, one button, and then it will go from having no views to having the views on the sheet with the dimensions, with tags and everything. So that's Glyph in a nutshell, essentially.
Awesome. So it's a Revit add-in.
Right.
We'll see some demo through it, but as far as the approach that you guys have taken to this, we're going to see exactly what tasks it automates. Was there sort of a plan for which tasks you decided to start attacking with the automation? I mean, I kind of mentioned in the beginning there, when I think of, and I'm sure everyone out there in the architecture or the design side, whether you're engineer, architect, making documents, you probably know some of the pains that we're talking about here. And as much as, tag all by view and stuff is helpful, there's still just a certain amount of arduous, repetitive tasks, especially if you're doing larger projects. Was there a plan on how you attacked we're going to do dimensioning, we're going to do view creation, was there a reason for each one of these? Did they sort of build on each other as far as the tool developed?
Yep. So it started with view creation. Then, this is the simplest one really,
Hmm.
because you could do that in Dynamo, but then not all the settings will save and stuff like that. So you could. So we started with plans, then we started with sheets, then we got into the more complex tasks,
Hmm.
which is the dimensioning and the tagging, which I will demo it later. And then we got into the sheet packing, because sheet packing, there is an art to it, really.
Hmm.
Like there is, you can't just place the views on a specific location. They need to be like beautiful and organized. So that's one thing that Glyph also tackles. We don't just automate it; we also care about graphics, right? Because with automation, sometimes if you place a bunch of dimensions but they don't make sense, then you're gonna be like, well, now I have to spend time sort of deleting these dimensions and modifying them. So that's something that we also tackle, the graphics portion of it.
And one of the things, having dealt with other tools within your suite, right, with Varus especially, is you guys have a pretty easy to use interface as far as installing, deployment, and all that good stuff. Is Glyph the same way? Is it a floating license, easy to install? It auto updates and all that good stuff.
Yep,
Similar to the rest of
100%.
the suite. Yeah, I will give kudos to that because there's sometimes it can be really clunky dealing with Revit add-ins, and you guys did clearly spend some time on that piece of it. Awesome,
For sure.
great. And I want to remind everyone to ask questions as we're going through. I will definitely feed them in as we go through this. So if you have any questions specifically on anything you see here or the general idea of Glyph and so on and so forth. Awesome. Before we jump into some demo and sort of showing the product, I did want to take a moment this season. I'm going to be highlighting a couple members from our private community. So for those of you that don't know, BIM After Dark has a private community where we have members that come together and socialize as well as learn with full length courses, sample files, template files, and office hours, and so on and so forth. And so not only just to make you guys aware that the community exists, but also to highlight some of our great members. So I wanted to take a quick moment to show that, and then we'll jump right into the demo reel and sort of talk about Glyph as we go through.
Hi, my name's Jerry Pascucci. I'm the BIM manager at Irwin & Layton. I've joined the community to learn some extra tips and tricks. Been working in Revit since 2010. I've been attached to Revit for a long time, always trying to push the envelope, learn more, do more, get more out of it. For Irwin & Layton, I do a lot of project coordination using Navisworks. When you announced that you were starting the community, I was really excited about that. I've been subscribed ever since you started the community. I feel like it's just a great resource to have between just getting answers from you, also having the entire community to be able to answer questions as well. Training tutorials I watch over and over again. They're just a great resource to have. And on top of that, all of the template files and sample files. At one point I had a question, how to make a jack arch. And I reached out, Jeff provided me with a video, and I couldn't get the pattern to align along the arch. With Jeff's video and additional help, I was able to get this jack arch to be modeled in there perfectly.
All right, thanks, Jerry. So you guys got to meet Jerry, a member from our community. If you're interested in joining the community and hanging out with a bunch of cool people that are literally doing nothing but helping each other become better Revit users and better at our professions, then definitely check it out. Head on over to community.bimafterdark.com, and hopefully I'll see you on the inside. It's a lot of fun over there. We have quite a few members actually in the chat too, so definitely. Who's in there? Oh, Reggie's in there. Stan's in there. How's it going, guys? Okay. Sweet. So let's jump into it now. Okay, so introduce the idea. Glyph, automating arduous tasks. Let's try and make all the boring stuff easy, and let's get back to the fun stuff. So Miguel, it's back to you. Let's maybe jump into it. Let's show everyone what this Glyph thing is all about.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so as I mentioned, a Glyph is a Revit add-in. So once you install it, you will have the EvolveLab tab, and then you will have this button right here. When you click it, UI will show up, and the UI will contain all the tasks and bundles that I previously mentioned. Essentially, the default ones are these ones. So this is the ones that you're going to see. But then you can customize them, and you can rename them and everything, but I will explain that a little later. Yeah, essentially like the UI, it's all about like the different tasks. As you can see right here, we have create views by level, we have create sheets, we have the dimension views or sheets. Then we have the tags. Then we have the import sheets by spreadsheet. And then there was the place views on sheets task.
Now, are these, sorry, I don't want to jump in, but are these all default, these tasks are just they're created, or were these created once you install? Most of these are the default tasks?
Yep, these are the default tasks. Yep.
And so the bundles are what's customizing. Oh, you can add tasks together. Is that the part that's more customized?
So everything is custom. And really, you can click this button right here, and you can create new tasks. And as you can see, a BIM After Dark. You can create different bundles, as you can see right here. Picking a couple tasks and creating the bundle, and you can see that this is the bundle that we just created that contains all the different tasks.
Awesome.
Yeah, so everything's customizable, and which is very, very powerful. And just because, inside the tasks and bundles, there is a lot of settings. So all the settings are saved to the task. And then what you can do later is you can export this task or import this task into your project. So let's just put this example. You want to create views by level, and you want a specific settings like the view family type, the view template. You want it to be a new view instead of dependent. You want a specific naming convention. Again, I'm just going very quickly on these settings, but I will explain it a little bit more. After Dark. And you could select like what kind of view types you would like to create. And then you can just click run. And you could see that in this case, the views were created. So yeah, these are essentially like all the settings we have, at least for the creating views portion of it. There is definitely a more challenging or more difficult or more fun, in my opinion, tasks like the dimensioning task and the tag views by category. But I always just start with this one because it's the simplest one. I feel like creating views. Is simple.
No, that's great, and that's I'm interested when I look at that. Create views by room. What is that doing? Is that creating a crop region based on rooms, or is that doing a scope box by the rooms? I'm curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, so the create views by room essentially just creates views. So let's just say that in the selection tab, we selected a couple of rooms, for example, like this 3 right here. And then in the settings, you could say, I want floor plans or elevations or ceiling plans or 3D views. And you could easily say, whether you want the crop box to be adjusted to the room or whether you want a call out, right? In this case, you can pick a call out, you can click run, and you could see that it created 3 call outs in this case, for the specific rooms.
Cool. Yeah. Super neat.
I think it's fun. Obviously.
No, that is super neat. So I think sorry, I'm just clicking the wrong button here. So I think and then create views by category. Is that similar where you would be able to say like get all the casework category, and then it'll make the same idea? It could do crop regions or something around the casework.
Exactly. Yeah. So once I get into the curtain wall bundle, which you previously mentioned about the curtain wall, storefronts, elevations, and dimensions and stuff like that. That's where we use the create views by category, because you can select any category and it will create the floor plan. I believe we have floor plan, elevation, and 3D view, and soon we will have the section.
So based on the category, maybe it's different selections, right? It wouldn't make sense. I mean, I guess depending on the category, it might make more sense. There was a quick question that is related to this part of it. So the question is it capable of using spaces or pulling through linked files? So I think we're talking about the room idea there. So is it capable of using spaces on the MEP side? And then is it also capable of pulling from a linked file?
So spaces, yes, but linked files, not yet. And that's in our roadmap. And that's one that we are pretty excited to work on it. Because it's kind of challenging when you're working on linked models, and that's essentially in the backlog. In the backlog, you'll be able to select elements from linked models, but right now it's whatever you have existing in your model. Yeah,
that's all. I mean, in general, that's even a challenge on the Dynamo front. When I'm working with linked models too, is trying to select multiple elements through a linked model is a nightmare. Yeah. So I can see where I'm assuming that's just an API thing, right? All they gotta do is flip a switch and give it to us, but they know. Right. Awesome.
One can wish, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, no, that's great. I think creating views is awesome. So let's maybe talk about creating sheets maybe next before we get into dimensions or tagging.
Yeah, for sure. So the create sheets, we have create sheets by level. And like we all know that you cannot technically assign, at least that I know of, and you cannot technically assign a level to a sheet. Maybe you can. But this is doing is essentially using whatever elements you select for the naming scheme, right? So we selected a level, entry level for a second floor and third floor. So what this is doing, this naming scheme,
Hmm.
is essentially saying use the name and then use a custom, or you could even map whatever parameter you want
Hmm.
for the naming scheme. So that's just something to consider. And then in the starting sheet number, this is essentially saying pretty much starting sheet number. So you could say B100, for example. You could specify whatever title block you want. And then we have this parameter setter setting at the bottom that allows you to set whatever parameters you want and whatever value you want to the newly created sheets. And we have these available for views and sheets. So if I just click run, you could see that it created 3 views. And if I click again, it will create another 3 views, and I can continue so on.
That's awesome. Great. Cool. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we should jump into dimensioning because I'm super excited to see it. I know there's a lot that's going to come out of it, but I'm already starting to see this idea of these individual tasks, and then once you're able to bundle them, I can start seeing how this, for anyone who's used Dynamo before, has probably tried to do some of these things in Dynamo and maybe successfully have, right? But you also know the challenge of creating that and deploying it and using it over time. But my mind is starting to go, and so I'm loving this. So let's do some dimensioning because I'm really curious to see how this thing works.
Perfect. Yeah. I will say the dimensioning one, it's one of my favorite ones, personally. Because dimensioning in Revit, at least in my opinion, it might not be the most fun task, in my opinion. Like, for example, we are talking about wall
Hmm.
dimensions, right? You have to like click tab, 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 tab,
Tab, and then if you miss it, you
tab,
got to go
tab,
back.
tab.
Oh yeah, oh yes.
Yeah,
I
for
think
a
we all
very
know.
long time. Yeah.
And the worst part about it's just so prescriptive, right? It's always the same, and so like
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like this is the standard for dimensioning. So why is it something that is not automated? Why would it not be automated, right? And yeah, you can modify it after the fact, but at least you just like tag all by view, right? Why not get it all out there, and then all you have to do is adjust a couple, right? I mean, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So when we open the dimensioning task, this will show up. So essentially here, which I kind of talk about it, but let me just rephrase it. We have the selection tab, the settings, and then the information tab. So in the information tab allows you to change the task name as well as the description of it. But if we go back to the selection tab though, what we can do is we are going to dimension this view as well as the level above it, and we are going to we are going to create walls dimensions and grids, if that's okay with you.
Hmm. Do it.
So the selection tab has a couple of buttons that I think that are important to consider because they're pretty powerful.
Hmm.
You have this long list where when you have a very large project, this could get a little tedious.
Hmm.
So we created this button right here that allows you to pick the active view or pick multiple views.
Hmm.
So when you pick multiple views, you can actually set them from the browser
neat.
and then run it essentially. Essentially it just selects it automatically for you,
Hmm.
which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, for anyone coding in the call, automating that process was fun. We had to find a workaround because essentially this, like the whole pick elements is
Hmm.
easy. But in some cases, Revit gets into this like mode where you have to select a stuff, and then at the top left corner there will be like cancel button. And that cancel button is not exposed in the UI, and we found a way to overwrite that. So
Nice.
I don't know. There's just small things, right? Small things in the coding side that makes us.
It is. It is. You know what would be really cool is you probably reverse engineer that, and I'm sure it can be done. Is when you're in a project where the browser's all messed up and it's not your job, but you're in a view that you want to find. If you reverse it and say just find that view for me over there on the freaking browser, and then just highlight it, zoom to it, or whatever, because that can also be a massive challenge. Expanding forever until you finally find that one view you're in.
100%.
All right, awesome. So you pick the 2 views that you wanted. And you said that we're going to tag grids. So you select the categories, grids, and walls. I see it says walls and curtain walls. Is that what it said for?
Walls and curtain walls, essentially, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And then in the settings tab, though, this is where the magic happens, I would say. especially for the dimensioning task as
Mm-hmm.
well as the tag task.
Yeah.
And always get that, the words that are kind of similar. So my English always gets on the wheel
Sounds
there.
better than me saying your last name.
I mean, you did pretty good. I'm just saying, you did pretty good before the call. Okay. Yeah, so in the settings tab, we have a few settings, right? We have the dimension and style. We have this button right here that, again, going back to what I previously mentioned, we do care about graphics. So what this button will do is move dimensions around. So to make sure that they are not overlapping each other or they are not overlapping other elements. So that's
So
really
it's looking
important.
for blank space anywhere, basically.
Correct.
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally, right?
Neat. Neat.
Yeah, ideally. It's not perfect, right?
Yeah. But still, it's still again getting us closer to what
Correct. Yeah,
we're all doing.
yeah, yeah. And I turn it off right now, just so you know, because it is slower than
Got it.
if I turn it on. So I'm just letting you know that that's the only reason why I turn it off. But in the category settings, though, we selected previously walls and grids. So for the wall section, we have all these wall dimension options. So we have interior wall dimensions, exterior wall raft openings, overall exterior wall length, overall building dimensions, and then we have these two that are special for elevations and sections. And then in the wall reference, you know how we talk about like the tab,
Oh yeah.
tab. You don't have to do that with Glyph, and you can easily just select the specific reference that you want or references, and then Glyph will automatically find that reference and dimension.
Awesome.
So that's a pretty nice feature that it's not as easy as you might think. This is not like especially the core exterior and core interior, they are not, as far as I remember, they are not exposed.
But that's great because like you mentioned, like finding, especially if you're going, let's say you're doing stud to stud, right? And so finding that, and then also moving the dimension out of the way. Like those are probably the two most arduous tasks of dimensioning. The linear, being able to make a string is nice and be able to move it, but like, tab, and then go back and move, and then do it again and again and again and again.
It gets pretty tedious. But yeah, we set all the settings. The last setting though is the offset from element, right? If we are dimensioning this wall, it will be the offset of it. And then the tie condition, that's pretty important. Is like how you want that dimension to be tied to a grid, whether it's the nearest grid or tied to all the grids intersecting the dimension. So that's something to note. And without further ado, we can just run it, and it shouldn't take too long. It should be fairly quickly. Let me just collapse the properties panel. But you could see, we could dissect a little bit the dimensioning. But we have the grid dimensions. We have the overall as well as the individual dimensions. We have the overall wall length of the exterior facade. And then we have the opening dimensions as well. Then we have the interior wall dimensions. Yeah, I said that right. And which, as you can see, it tries to dimension in the most efficient way all the walls in your project. And not in the project, sorry, in the views that you select. In the project, that would be a little too much. But essentially all the walls in the project.
So that when you were setting those settings, I saw you tweaked, I think it was a 2.5 foot dimension. Correct. Is that the offset from the wall that you were showing? So that's mostly for the exterior wall. So then the next one was 2.5 feet from each other. So if you wanted it to be a little further away from the wall or whatnot, those are the settings you were tweaking there, right?
Yep, for sure. Yep. So
and the interior is going to try and find just the most efficient location to get across it, and that'll be where it kind of lands.
Correct. Yep, exactly. And I think it's important to note when we are talking about dimensioning or automation or Glyph, is that we are trying to get you 80% there. Right. And there will still going to be that 20% that you're going to spend trying to figure out, like, okay, do I need another dimension? Does this dimension make sense? And so essentially developing that critical thinking instead of having to, start from scratch. So that's just an important disclaimer there.
Yeah. 100%. No, that's awesome. And it did the other floor plan too. So you can,
correct. Yep.
In theory, once you get those settings going,
it did the same thing.
Super neat.
Yeah. Following the dimensioning, unless you want to move to the tagging, but
no, go ahead.
Okay. We have these dimension sheets by category task that essentially, instead of you selecting views, you are selecting sheets. So right now we will be doing a wall section dimensions, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine you have like 5 sheets of wall sections.
Yep.
You can just select them. Then you can just select wall height and openings and the references. Just pick the first one. You can click run, and then it will dimension all the views, all the sections actually on the sheet.
Mm.
And it will create, let me zoom in a little bit. It will create the overall as well as the opening dimensions. And then it will tie that dimension to the grid depending on your settings.
That's awesome. Do you mind running that again? I really do want to see the clash, the avoidance thing. Do you think it would take too long to see that? I'd just love to see how it comes up when it moves some of those. Just visually, I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely do that.
Either on the plan or maybe the sections is fine too. I see some where you might do it on the section, but either way,
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see what the result kind of looks like. That's all.
For sure, yeah.
If it takes a little while, then we can kill some time. We'll talk about some stuff.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, let me do it on in here, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
It will be faster. So let me just click it, make sure this is good. Perfect. This is good. I think I need to select the views, maybe. Let me just select one view for now, and I can run it. And it will take longer.
That's okay.
It
didn't take that much longer.
It just ran, right? So it did it, right? And then you're gonna ask me, well, this is not correct, right? And I know that would be an important thing to consider, just because this is the only element that we would not that doesn't work with the annotation collision feature.
A section tag is the only one that doesn't work. That's crazy.
Yeah, and there's like an API, and we try to figure out a bunch of stuff to make it work.
That's
we just couldn't. We just couldn't. And that's pretty. It was pretty unfortunate, to be honest, because I wanted it to be perfect. And
of course.
but there's limitations there, right? But the annotation collision though works amazing in the tags, and that's where we spend like 80 to 90% of that sprint, and that's a pretty nice feature to have.
That's awesome. I think before we jump into tags, then, because I think that is a good next step. There was a question about dimensioning X tier structure layer to another X tier structure layer. So I guess in those wall settings, I guess maybe that's like if you had brick or like a facade or something in the same wall type, can you do like, it would be like layer one, finish layer 1 goes to like finish layer 2 or structure layer, you know what I mean? Instead of just choosing one, I guess. I don't remember what the wall options were for the dimension options, but if you wanted to maybe dimension let's say a couple layers of that wall instead of just one layer, is that it would just be you just select whatever you need to, whatever you want to send it, whatever you want to select.
Yeah. If I understood correctly, yeah, you can just select multiple.
And it's all on that function of that layer, whatever that setting is in the wall type, right? So it depends on what's in your project. Got it.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Will it clash? Oh, will it clash with view reference tags?
View reference tags. It should.
Okay.
If not,
so right now, to your knowledge, it's the section. This section, is it the wall section or any section head? Like, does it matter what type of section it is? It's any section head.
Any section.
That's bizarre, huh?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's jump into tagging, because I'm curious to see how the tagging goes, and then I'm really curious to see how it all kind of bundles together.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So to demo that, I think to demo the tag views by category, the best way we can do it is to show you what it would do without it, and then show you what it does with it, which is pretty important. And just on a side note though, we know there is the toggle function in Revit, as you mentioned before, and Glyph goes beyond that essentially, because you can tag multiple views at the same time, and then you can use this button right here to filter out specific elements or specific, in this case, walls that you want to tag, right, based on whatever parameter you want. So that's something.
So instead of tagging all walls, you can tag all wall type 2L or whatever it is, and so you're filtering condition down. And then obviously the multiple views on a sheet thing, we could obviously see. I mean, you definitely can show us, but I could tell right away how valuable that's going to be, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me just show you a pretty simple. Okay, you can see that I turn it off and I run it, and you can see that in the entire floor plan if you see these are empty, it's because I didn't set, that's a kernel wall, but I didn't set, the wall type, as most of you know in the call. But you can see that, it looks pretty bad, right? Like, let's just be honest here. We will have to move things around and spend quality time moving tags around. So instead of doing that, you can use this button right here, and then we can change that to 4, and then we can run it. It would take longer, as I mentioned, but you could see that, even in this section right here, it did a significantly better job, right? You avoided these tags, it avoided the walls, and, and it did it for the entire floor plan, right?
And there's an option to turn on the leader. I think I see it. Yeah, I see it there. Okay, leader. Sweet.
For sure, yeah, you can turn that on as well. And it's important to consider, right? It will not be perfect. There's, out of this floor plan, right? I just picked, this tag. I think it might be the only one, and that you will have to move around, right? And that's where this setting comes from. This setting is essentially your limitation in terms of how far you want the tag to be from the object. So the larger it is, the better the result is going to be, pretty much, because it's going to find it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Neat. And so that, I assume, has the same functionality on the per sheet. So if you wanted to do tag all view types per sheet or whatever, it does the same thing.
Yep, and we have the same settings, correct? Yep.
Very cool.
Pretty nice. That feature was fun to develop. Not gonna lie, that was a fun one.
Yeah, no, the clash avoidance is or the object annotation avoidance, whatever you want to call it, is super cool. Like when you think about it, like we mentioned, that's part of the task is constantly chasing around to see if your tags are overlapping things. Very cool. Is there any other tasks we want to show before we jump into the idea of bundles?
I think usually what I do, I try to look at bundles and then explain the place views on sheets task using the bundle, which is easier to understand. So we can move to bundles.
Let's do it. I'm checking. There's no other questions right now. There's a couple good ones that we already answered. So yeah, we're good, man. Let's jump into it. Let's jump into bundles.
Sounds great. Okay. So as I mentioned before, bundles essentially combines all these tasks into one thing. So instead of you having to create the views by room, click it, create sheets by room, click it, place views on sheets, click it, you can just place all these into one group. And really all you have to do is select the elements, usually on the first task, and then run it, right? So in here, we have the enlarged plans bundle. So what this is going to do is we can select these 3 sheets right here. What this is going to do is going to create the floor plan, is going to create elevations of all the walls in the room, is then going to create a sheet per room, because that's how this is set up. And then it was going to place the views on the sheets. So yeah, that was me a lot of talking, but I can just run it, and it should take 23 seconds max. It depends, honestly. If I have Visual Studio open, it might take a little longer. But it should be fairly quickly. It was not 20 seconds.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So yeah, you could see that it created 3 sheets, right? And it labeled it as such with all the naming scheme that we talk about. And you can see that it plays the elevations and it plays the floor plan. And it did that for every single room that we selected. And then you may be asking, Jeff, how is it placing the views on the sheets?
I was going to say that, yep. How is it determining how it wants? And actually, before that, too, is it if you wanted to create multiple rooms on one sheet, is that deep in the settings somewhere you can say, like, fit, there we go, multiple elements per sheet. Cool.
Yep. You can just multiple elements per sheet, or I have this bundle that I created for this demo.
Very specific ones.
Yeah, there was just place all the views. It will place all the views into one.
Okay, so let's talk about this layout because I'm interested now. Let's see this.
Perfect.
So we got a nice UI for the layout. I love this.
Always. The user experience and the UI is very important. But yeah, okay. So to understand the layout portion, so this is essentially, actually, let me erase that for a second. It will be easier to explain. Okay, there you go. So this blue box represents the usable area of your title block. So let's just say that you have this title block. It represents this portion right here. We have a code that tags the area where you want to place the views, and that's what this is representing. And inside this, which is called a layout, we have different zones. So you can click this button right here, and you can click a space or yeah, space I think it is, or shift, and you can essentially divide
Wow.
the usable area of your title block into different zones. And inside that zone, you could say, which is kind of what we did over here, is like, okay, place the floor plan over here. And then over here, you could say placed, I don't know, let's just say the ceiling plan, right? And then over here, you place all the elevations. So you could subdivide all the zones into different things. That way you really can control where the views are getting placed.
That's
Yeah.
neat. So then could you also say like room 106 in this layout, 105 in this layout, that type of thing as well? And say like, I want if you want to divide the sheet by the four rooms and then within that layout have the floor plan and then the elevations in that one quadrant.
Yeah, you can do that. If I understood correctly, you can do
Yeah.
that. But if you're saying like one room gets one layout and then the other room gets another layout,
Hmm.
that you can't do that right now,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you will have to duplicate the bundle and do
Mhm.
that.
No,
And
this is super cool though. Like doing elevations like you just showed, being able to show like all the floor plans on the bottom, all the elevations on the top, and then it just
yeah,
automatic. That's just like you said, getting us 80% there. Like that's you know you can mock up as much as you want in a template, but you're always creating these things through projects, right? It's always happening.
correct, yeah. And a good example of how powerful it is, I created this bundle
Hmm.
that essentially creates a bunch of interior elevations and the sheet, and then he places them in the sheet. So let me go a little crazy here, and let me pick a bunch of oops. Let me pick a bunch of rooms. It's gonna select a couple, and then I can run it. And this one should be quick, I hope. The reason why I wanted to demo this is because Glyph will know if all the views fit on the sheet, and if
Mm,
it doesn't fit, then it will create a new sheet,
mm,
and it will place the remaining sheets on the next one, and then et cetera, et cetera.
mhm,
So essentially, it's kind of what it did over here, right? It created this sheet over here
mhm.
with all the elevations,
Yeah.
and then it created this other sheet as well. And yeah, and one thing to consider though is you might be asking why did it leave this space over here? That's a couple of reasons why. And the first one is because we have a tolerance because we know that like at the end of the day they are going to be moved slightly to make it prettier
Mhm,
graphically.
mhm,
And second of all, we have hard coded a way that like there is not going to be an elevation in a different like we're not going to divide the four elevations from one room into
mhm,
different sheets, right? So they're going to stay grouped together in the same sheet always.
mm,
So that's something that we did for legibility in terms of how you read the documents.
mhm. On that front, is it for the view titles? Is it are there settings within it, or is it just doing its best to set up the view title based on the size of the view type of thing?
Are you talking about the this title right here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is essentially just placing it right at the bottom.
Hmm.
It will depend kind of on your viewport type.
Yeah, and your standard, and some people
Correct.
have
Yeah.
like a centered view title, some people have an offset, that kind of
Correct.
stuff.
Yeah. Correct.
And yeah, somebody asked about view templates. I'm assuming when you can set a view template when you're generating these views as well. So if I'm
For
assuming
sure.
when it creates an elevation, you can
Yep.
assign it to a view template, which is really cool.
100%, yeah. And just a reminder that all these settings will be saved to the task.
Mm,
So what a lot of my clients do, they save all these custom tasks and bundles
mm,
into the Revit template.
mm-hmm,
So when you start a new project, you will have these really customized tasks.
mm-hmm,
And all you really have to do is just select the elements and run it, right? So
mm-hmm. Oh, and I
that's
love that. I'm seeing the settings now. So the room height is a cool one. So I love that idea of the room height because I'm sure we've all run into that weird issue with Revit when you have like weird like skinny floors and stuff, and it makes that real skinny interior elevation on you. Somebody also asked about the scale. I'm assuming that that's all part of the initial settings when you're doing this initial setup. What the interior elevation scale is and so on and so forth.
correct. Yeah.
Seems like most of those customizations you guys have thought of, which is really cool. Um,
We,
yeah, somebody was asking. I missed it there, so I'm sorry, but something about structural stuff. So I guess maybe they're asking like what other is there any other examples maybe that we could give of other than just like generating from rooms as far as like elements, whether it's I know you're in the architectural model, so we don't need to go off books as far as that's concerned, but maybe element based like you said, curtain wall elevations maybe is a good one instead of a room based example.
Yeah.
of like generating elevations and putting them on a sheet, and then that kind of.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming actually, let's back up a little bit more. So I'm assuming you could also do generate curtain wall elevations, put them on the sheets, and then tag and dimension them as all part of a bundle. Is that kind of how this all kind of builds together?
100%.
All right, I thought so. Let's do it because I want to see it now.
Yeah, and that's one that like I have a personal relationship with it. I know that's a weird phrasing, but and I was working on a very big project, and I had to document the storefronts, and it was interesting. It was a very long process. So
I'm sure.
Yeah. So with this bundle, a curtain bundle, essentially, you can either have this filter that will use all the curtain walls in your project, but for the sake of time, let's just select a couple. Let's just select this one, for example, and this one's and that one, and that's sufficient. And then you can click run. Should take 16 seconds, I hope.
Is it always the same?
It depends. Honestly, it depends. So, in the meantime, while this is running, the size of the model is going to matter in terms of the speed.
Of course.
Right? That's just something to consider. We did do a test on a 1 gigabyte model and 1,000 rooms and 1,000 elevations. And it was fairly quickly. I mean, it took like minutes, right?
Yeah.
I think it took like 10 minutes, but it was 1,000 rooms, right? So just something to consider, right? 10 minutes is like a long time when you're just staring at your screen.
But it's better than 10 days, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. So you can see right here that it created a sheet, A50, and then it created the elevations, dimensioned them, the overall, as well as the individual mullion dimension. And something to consider, because that might be on the chat at one point, is there is two types of wall references. Regarding curtain walls, you can either dimension the mullion's width, which we see that happening sometimes, or the mullion center line, which is what we are showing right now in the active view or active sheet. Yeah.
Neat. One thing that I saw when you were doing the dimensioning tool was other than the auto dimensioning the view, there was a line option in the task.
Yeah.
Can maybe just show that real quick, because I'm curious to see. I'm assuming that means you're clicking across the line, but I'm really curious to see how that looks and how it works. Because I could see that being also valuable for those intermediate things where you're trying to like fill in some gaps of areas and stuff.
For sure, yeah. So that one, it is pretty much, I think you just explained it better than me. But
No.
much. Let me just delete the dimensions, and that way we can.
But it's one of those things where I feel like once we see it, it's like, why is it just not? That's not how you dimension in Revit, right?
Right. But yeah, this one right here, this is modes, right? We have by view now, and then we have by line. So what this is doing, let me just make sure that the references are correct. There we go. Perfect. Actually, let me turn the offset off, because essentially if I draw a line, it will offset right from that point. But let me just draw it. So what this is doing, when you click play, something happened, and this is a good example. Oh, I know what happened. And let me just show you. So something happened, and that's because I messed up pretty much. But a warning showed up at the bottom, right? And there's this tab right here that tells you exactly what happened. You can just hover over, and it will tell you what was wrong with it. And so that segue, essentially, it was meant to be.
It's a live show. It's all good, man. Keep going.
Yeah, it's all good. But let me just duplicate, and let me just actually create a task, and that way we can create. That way you all can know how to create a task, and then I'm going to run the by line, if that's okay. So we could do, let's say, create dimensions by line. You can click create. It's going to take a couple seconds, and then we go to the dimension portion of it, and then we can say this, and then by line. We can click run, and you could see that you're drawing a line, and in fact it's essentially telling you which walls are being dimensioned in red, and you could see that it's kind of drawing it as I am doing it, and it just draws it, right, which is pretty cool. But yeah, one feature though that I find super useful, especially when we are talking about this by line mode, is this button right here. And this is only available for tasks. So this button right here, let me go back to the EvolveLab tab. But essentially this button, what it's going to do, there we go. Okay, this button is going to add that task to the ribbon. So you can see right here that we have 3 dimensions by line, right? And all you have to do is really click it and then, run it, click it again, call it good, right? And you could really, you don't have to open the UI, you don't have to open any settings because everything is saved to that button right there.
That's neat. So that's only for tasks. That's not for bundles?
For now, that's only for tags. Yeah. For bundles, it's a little trickier. At one point, we'll for sure develop it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's really cool though. What a neat feature to be able to dump it onto the ribbon and put it right up front there. I'm not going to go through some specific questions, but there's a theme for a couple of the questions, and I think you might have invited this with the 1 gigabyte model. I think there's a lot of people just asking about the stress test of it as far as on larger projects. So there's a couple questions on cloud hosting. Is there any issues with whether the models ACC BIM 360 cloud hosted, but then also large models. And I personally work on a lot of big projects too. I mean, we've got one right now that's probably close with all the links in. It's probably like an 8 gigabyte file. I'm assuming, and I don't know how far the stress testing has gone. I'm assuming just like pretty much anything with any of the tasks in Revit is it probably would work. It's just going to take longer, is my guess. Right. And so you have to have the patience to not Control-Alt-Delete it, or ignore the not responding for a while until it comes back type of thing, right? I'm guessing.
Correct. Yeah. So a couple of things with that. Model size will definitely affect the speed of it. Glyph, I'm telling you, it has been in development for about a year, or no, actually 2 years now. So it is very good at telling you when something doesn't work. It will let you know right away, right? So if it's spinning, just grab a cup of coffee.
If there's an error, there's an error, right? If it's spinning, 100%. It's still working. I promise.
100%. I promise.
I love that. No, that's
and it will work.
That's awesome. That's really cool. No, this is great. I think this tool. I mean, I think it automates so much of the BS, and I do applaud you guys for the UI and the user experience through the UX, really, right? And again, I've mentioned it before. That's the one thing I noticed with even just using Varus, the process. You guys clearly spent time on UI UX development too, which I absolutely love. I was just checking. I don't think there's any other questions, right? Oh, and Ben's actually in the chat, so he's answering questions. All right, Ben Goulart from EvolveLab is also in there, so thanks, Ben. Ben will handle some of the questions too.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. This is great, man. And any final words that you'd want the folks to know about as far as Glyph and the tool, and is there anything that you wanted to show maybe that you didn't get to yet?
Yeah, just one last thing that I think is kind of important is the tasks are safe, and the bundles are safe to the project. So that's something to consider, right? If you switch projects, those tasks will be gone. And that's why we have the export and import function. So just as long as you know that like the tasks are safe to the project, then we're good.
So in that sense, but then I'm assuming then they can live inside a template though. So if you have a series of tasks, one-off tasks for projects, but you can always keep maybe your template up to date, and then also just host that imported or the exported file somewhere that's doable. So that's good. So even though they exist in the project, it's one of those things where you have to know if you create a new task in a project, doesn't mean that it's automatically in the template or in the rest of Revit when you open a new project or create a new one, right?
Exactly. In the future, we will have a button that allows you to select like a file path or like a folder, and we can just load whatever task you have in that folder. But that's a future development. You have a long backlog.
There was definitely a lot of interest in linked models too, and so understandably so. I think what you mentioned is it's on the roadmap, and I have to imagine that to some extent. Knowing what I know, it's probably just dealing with the limitations of the Revit API and stuff when it comes to linked models. It is a challenge, but no, that's really cool. And even like what I think about too when it comes to linked models is if you're using like a host model and you're pulling documentation through the link model and you're using like by view and stuff like that, having a way to potentially do it without actually opening the host model in the foreground or something like that is really neat. But either way, super neat. Super cool, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on and showing us. As I mentioned before, this season I wanted to focus on construction documentation, and so I thought, why not kick it off with making it as easy as possible to do construction documentation. So, last but not least, where can anyone go to check out Glyph? Where can they go to reach out to you and try this tool out?
Yeah, so the first, you can try Glyph for free. I believe the trial is 14 days. You can just go to EvolveLab.io and then go to the applications and then Glyph, and then you can just click download, and then the installer will be downloaded, and then you can make sure all your Revit instances are closed, and then yeah, that's it. And then let me just show the form a little bit. So I talk a lot, right? And there's a lot of settings that I didn't get to it. But we have a forum that has the roadmap. We post, whenever we make a release, we post about what got fixed, what we added. For example, this last one, we actually increased the performance of the tasks by 3.5 or 5 times faster, which is pretty exciting. But then we also have workflows. So if you go to the all tasks, and then you can click Glyph workflow. We essentially explain pretty much everything that I explained right now, but in more detail. So you have a conscious decision when you change every single setting, you know exactly what it's doing, which is important for us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I will make sure to put links to EvolveLab, to the website to get there, as well as to the forum so everyone can access it. And kudos to you and the rest of the EvolveLab team. You guys continue to impress. And like I said, the rate at which new features are being pumped out and always seem useful and like and like actual like value add to the customers. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you coming on, Miguel. How about yourself? Is there any way that people can reach out to you directly? Would you say the forum or
yeah,
up to you?
You could put Miguel and then at evolvelab.io.
Perfect.
And Miguel is Miguel.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, Miguel,
I'm pretty happy that my last name is not in my email, to be honest. Don't make it so much harder.
It's no problem at all, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on and being willing to be the first guest this season here on episode 101. Hopefully have you come back in a year or two, and we'll have, God only knows what this thing will look like, right?
Yeah, it's gonna change quite a bit.
Awesome, and thank you guys all for joining us as well. This has been fun. I'm super excited to finally be back here live streaming after a couple months off. Thank you to BIMbox for supporting this live stream and supporting what we do. Be sure to subscribe to the channel here. If you see the thing ticking in the background there, I think we're only about 200 subscribers away from 80,000. And then only 20,000 away from 100, so we got to get there. And then, of course, if you're interested in checking out what the BIM After Dark community is all about, head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. With that, I want to bid you all adieu. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you guys soon.